Hello dear viewer, I think I wanna drop my few cents into the never-ending I want this and that in the next game stream of verbal nerdgasm. We will talk over the footage of my Skyrim builds, which I invite you to watch. I tried to boil the wishlist down to things I think would be the most impactful on the series and tried to eliminate the usual Morrowind was the best Elder Scrolls nostalgia talk, although some of it will probably trickle in through the gaps. I can't help myself too much. I did not exclude Fallout-inspired ideas, though. I think Bethesda Fallout games have quite a few cool ideas which could successfully be implemented in a fantasy game and should be implemented, and I will start with that then. So firstly, I am one of the obnoxious players who pretty much always do some crafting, no matter how many times I'm told it's OP, and I think crafting is generally an immersive way to customize your character, give the playthrough some uniqueness, so I, for one, would like to see it expanded and rebalanced. It could affect the combat mechanics in a pretty subtle way. Ever since Oblivion, it bothered me a little bit that the player has no impact on weapon range and attack speed, both of which seem to have an effect on combat style, a rather strong and interesting, if a little bit subtle effect. But this is just never explored properly, in my opinion, in the Elder Scrolls games with no customization, and these statistics don't even show in the weapon stats in your inventory. Faster weapon, like a dagger for example, can be very powerful with some specific enchantments, even at the price of base damage, and it would truly be a blast if you could get a sword and reforge it, for example, to make it a little bit lighter and swing a little bit faster. If you could also make the blade a little bit longer and thinner visually, it would at the same time address the common complaint about Skyrim vanilla swords all looking like cricket bats, and they are all basically very heavily looking broadswords, and that's not exactly how a medieval warfare looks. Anyway, some of the upgrades or reforging could also be tied to the material of which the weapon is made, or to the weapon type. So axes could have a different list of upgrades than swords, and orcish axes could have some things specific only to them, undoable for, say, steel axes. This is obviously inspired by weapon mods from Fallout games, but I think it can be implemented in a game like Skyrim because all of it can be seen as blacksmithing techniques your character picks up as they progress. Potentially, it could create hours of exploration of what is doable for what weapon and how they upgrade affect the basic combat mechanics like DPS and stamina consumption. The same can be applied to armors and shields, of course, although I am not quite sure how to do it without doubling or overshadowing the enchanting functionality, which I think, of course, should definitely stay. I do, however, think that if the skills and perks systems resemble the ones in Skyrim in any way, the Arcane Blacksmith perk should also be expanded, maybe divided into a few different perks, allowing the player to make their weapons work better with certain types of enchantments. So for example, we have Stalrim in Skyrim, which makes all frost enchantments placed on them stronger. How cool it would be if with some smithing perks you could place magic runes on your sword, which would increase the effectiveness of, say, stamina depleting and absorbing enchantments, or apply slight weakness to magic on strike. The runes could work basically as a system to buff specific enchantments on your weapons. A system like this, with reforging and rebalancing your weapons, with arcane blacksmith runes focused on improving specific enchantments, would be my dream crafting system. Granted, it would probably require rethinking enchanting system as well in order to make it stand on its own without compelling all enchanters to also become blacksmiths. While we are at the subject of customization, I will say something slightly unpopular now. I do not think spellcrafting should return. Not without a major overhaul and restructuring. The reason I am saying this is because I've been playing Skyrim for years and never really felt the need of spellcrafting return. You can combine two effects in Skyrim simply because you have two functional hands, possibly with a different spell in each one. Fireball and Frenzy, for example, is a nice combo and you can do without any special system. I do agree it used to be tons of create creative fun to make your own spells, and just like it is to create your own multi-effect potions. Actually, it was considerably more fun. The problem is that with the classic spell crafting, the game designer is facing a binary choice between creative fun and balance, which I think should not be necessary. Skyrim is not the most balanced game in the universe, but compared to the previous Elder Scrolls game, man, it would make Thanos proud.
Perfectly balanced, this whole thing should be.
It would be a shame to lose it over some nostalgia. So if we are to have something resembling spellcrafting in the future, I think it could go more along the lines of the Apocalypse mod Spell Weave spell. Except much more complex and customizable. Spell weaving offers a small list of upgrades you can add to a specific spell. It should, I think, be done spell by spell with no limits on how many spells you can alter or upgrade. But each time you do it, you should pay in some harvestable resource, maybe soul gem, maybe something more unique and rare. And to make it even more intricate, the list of available spell upgrades should probably differ from school to school. This would give the devs much more control over what can potentially be done within the system to screw up the balance of the system, and therefore seems to be more balanced overall than the classic spellcrafting from the older games. And speaking of magic, still, I would so much love to see mysticism back, although not without many changes. I just have a more general idea which could work with restoring mysticism and work perfectly as a hub for many new gameplay features, as well as reintroduce some of the old functionalities of mysticism. I think alteration in Skyrim is a fairly unique skill which offers some general upgrades for all types of mages, even those not really specializing in the skill. So I would love to see such a skill to be implemented for all the other major playstyles, so for warriors and thieves. And mysticism would be one such skill, offering a lot of upgrades, and for the other gameplay styles we should have let's say speech, reimagined speech for thieves, and something like fencing or combat stances for the fighters. So speech should be vastly improved and contain perks allowing you to bypass most combat encounters by negotiating with and intimidating enemies. Ideally, it would offer enough perks and abilities to justify reintroducing a separate merchant/mercantile skill, which is by itself underrated and is the safest way of getting good gear early in the previous Elder Scrolls games. For a warrior, the fencing skill should unlock a number of combat stances, each one of them affecting your attack speed, melee range, combat movement speed, power attack damage, possibly adding additional effects to power attacks, and so on and so forth. And mysticism, as mentioned above, would be something like that, but for spells. It could govern the aforementioned spell weaving feature, as well as offer the player the ability to improve the damage, range and area of effect for the spells of various schools. With such a setup, we would have one more skill per playstyle, with each playstyle having one crafting skill, and like in Skyrim, and one utility, so to say, skill improving the usefulness of all the other skills from that playstyle. Needless to say, I do not believe skills should be ditched in favor of perks-only system like in Fallout 4. I think we really have enough character building freedom as it is, and we don't need to sacrifice strategy and planning completely. Granted, in Fallout 4 it is at least related to your special attributes, but I doubt they would restore those in the Elder Scrolls, so I really hope they will at least stick with the skills. Oh, and by the way, Todd, no freaking voiced protagonist. Okay, if you do voiced protagonist, I will cry so hard you will hear me across the Atlantic and you will feel sad for making a grown man cry. You don't need this, I don't need this. There's no way of doing this right for a game where the player defines the character, unless you have the time and money to hire like 60 remarkable voice actors and make them all record all the player lines with all different directions from all the different directors, and then make like 20 dialogue choices for every situation. Otherwise it's futile. You should know better and leave the PC voice to our imaginations. Imaginations. Stop it, Todd. Just Just stop it, Todd. Okay, so with that said, let's proceed. There is an idea in Fallout 4 that should be implemented in test games in some new way, and it's settlement building. It probably should work very differently. It probably shouldn't force the player to be on a constant search for resources. It could require buying a plot of land first, like in Hearthfires, but I think it is such a remarkable time waster and has been done brilliantly by so many modders by now, there's really no reason not to go with it for the next Elder Scrolls game. The way I imagine it, there should probably be less available settlements than in Fallout 4, with each one of them having more pre-existing features. Actually, I would make it a part of a more complex social life gameplay overall, allowing the player to join the ranks of a land-owning aristocracy and maybe even becoming a member of a court, becoming a jarl, slash prince, slash count of a given hold slash county as a final stage of the long social climbing. This idea pops up in my head each time I play The Guild 2, which is a remarkable game I suggest you playing. It's a German game similar to The Sims in many aspects, in which climbing up the social ladder, taking offices in your chosen city, and competing with other citizens is the central piece of gameplay. Bethesda has been consistently cutting ideas like this from Elder Scrolls ever since they got rid of that rebuilding the city of Kvatch questline in Oblivion. They also cut a lot of the original civil war concepts in Skyrim. It's time to stop this. Todd, just do it properly this time. Let us become a Jarl and make us earn it properly, so we don't have to waste years making mods which will be incredibly hard to seamlessly merge with the basic game. With a system of ranks and titles within a county or hold, you could possibly even improve the existing cities, inviting new merchants, improving the merchants' stock, affecting local prices, building up new defenses. There is a group of players who always go for mods allowing for such things, but the mods are often introduced to the game world in a rather disappointing and immersive way. It should be done properly, goddammit, and the only way of doing it properly is having it as a part of a core gameplay from day one, imagined and executed by the same people who made the whole darn game. It could potentially even make the marriage feature slightly less boring if the player could delegate some of the settlement management decisions to their spouses and cold-heartedly pick their marriage candidate on the grounds of their social standing, as you should. This all sounds a bit far-fetched, like it could possibly take too much attention from adventuring, but if Fallout 4 was good for anything, it was for proving how RTS and economy elements can be implemented in an action-adventure game without much of a problem. It is actually, in my view, most redeeming characteristic of Fallout 4, the fact that you have this choice between building up and peaceful gameplay and adventuring, and it all kind of combines pretty well. You always are on the lookout for resources in your adventures, and these resources can help you building up your settlement. This offers a lot of variety in gameplay, and I would love to see it implemented in some way in the next Elder Scrolls game. Actually, even in Morrowind, I remember since Morrowind thinking about that it should be implemented, and now is finally the time, goddammit. But going back to the core gameplay now, there is one thing I'd like to see in combat. Just one. I don't care that much. They can do whatever they want with combat as far as I'm considered, but could we please get the spears back? Todd? Years ago, Todd explained the decision of removing certain weapons in Oblivion.
You know, I think most people, most fans will look at it and say, it's great, you should change the leveling, add spears, add crossbows, add this, and add some more races. And I usually approach it from, well, I want to know what skills are superfluous, that we should fold into something else to make the choice of what your character is more meaningful, make that choice more meaningful, and how are the races different? You know, I think 10 races is enough. How is playing an orc different than playing a high elf or those kind of things.
And I can stand behind the idea that less is more often, but they went a little bit too far and a little bit too shallow at the same time. Not only the reintroduction of crossbows in Downguard proved that there was no need to remove them in the first place, but also they never really perfected the uniqueness and diversity of gameplay with the weapons that remained in the series. The diversity can be greatly improved by giving the player the ability to affect weapon speed and range in game, as I said, and at the same time we could get more weapon types. The fun I had with crossbows in Downguard made me think, well, Todd, what about spears? Of all the weapons they dropped from Morrowind to Oblivion, spears I miss the most. What about all my legionary builds, Todd? How do you go Legion without a spear? I just don't understand. Make it stop, Todd. I think a spear should be perhaps the only weapon which can be wielded in one or both hands, or maybe even thrown for a single high damage ranged attack. This is not realistic or historically believable in any way. Obviously, you would have different types of spears, javelins, and polearms for different attacks and different types of combat in a real historic battle. But as far as the depiction of spear fighting in movies goes, it is often used in this versatile manner. And we all know that Hollywood's bullcrap is actually way more important than any actual education, so screw it, let's have the Omni Spears in Skyrim. This way we would have a weapon which perhaps couldn't reach the overall damage of a sword in the hands of a master swordsman, but could be perfect for a more mixed combat style and less specialized builds. Spears, historically speaking, were rather cheap and easy to make, so they would be used more frequently and prominently than swords and axes. Price never matters enough in the Elder Scrolls games, and I don't think it ever will, but if it was a weapon with which you sacrifice some endgame damage for early game flexibility, I think it could entice some players to use it. Finally, there's one more thing that bothers me since Oblivion, and it is the guilds. It's been said enough times that the guild questlines in Skyrim are too short when compared to Oblivion's and often feel underdeveloped, so to say, so I'm not going to complain about it again, although I agree with the complaints. But there's one more thing related to the guilds that I think is mishandled in Oblivion and then just got carried over to Skyrim without much thought, and it's simply about the number of the guild quest lines. Why the hell do the sneak-based characters get 2 dedicated guilds? I know technically any character can join and complete any guild, yeah, sure, but the quests and themes of the storylines are clearly aimed at specific types of characters, and it is not very fair, damn it, that the sneaky guys get more than the others. Yes, an assassin can be something very different from a thief, but so can a knight be from a mercenary warrior. There is 3 basic playstyles, and either 4 demand 6 main guilds. Thieves' Guild and the Dark Brotherhood could be continued, so it would leave us with figuring out 2 more guilds. One geared towards a specific type of a warrior, and one for a specific type of a mage. For battle mages, perhaps? They seem to be very important in Tamriel. Kings have their battle mages, emperors have them. They save empires and decide history, and therefore there should be an organization focusing on training them and using their skills to the benefit of the broader society. Alternatively, we could ditch the entire concept of dedicating guilds to a playstyle and just introduce organizations that employ all kinds of adventurers with various subdivisions. A little bit like the Downguard works in Skyrim, it seems to have radiant quests and rewards useful for all kinds of builds and an overarching theme of vampire slaying, and so we could have some guilds that employ all types of adventurers, give some quest rewards related to all playstyles, and have an overarching theme of whatever. Maybe we could go with this for all the guilds. Maybe the Fighters Guild could offer some items, quest rewards, radiant quests, or even spells for spell swords and battle mages, for example. Maybe Mages Guild could have a Nightblade division? Something like that. If all of this seems a little bit too much work or deviates too much from your favorite Elder Scrolls concept, I would at least propose to introduce something like the lesser guilds. These would not alter or replace the 4 main guilds, but would simply be smaller organizations offering some choice of radiant repeatable quests. This is a suboptimal solution, but at least it wouldn't take too much time to complete for the devs, and could be later improved and expanded by modders. There was, for instance, a Vampire Slayer guild in Oblivion, if you don't know. Its whole purpose was to give the player one cool quest and then pay for every little bit of vampire dust that you bring them. Not the most glittery game design in the world, but I remember using it from time to time just for roleplay, and at least it could be an excuse to revisit some places that otherwise don't really seem to have a purpose, like Falkreath in Skyrim, for example. I love the town. I already said that in many videos, but once you finish the few related quests there is absolutely no point in returning. If it at least had a little guild hall with some unique merchant, a player bed, and a radiant quest to pick up, I wouldn't feel like I'm wasting my time on basically sightseeing when I'm there late game. So these are my main hopes and ideas. There is more, of course, there is always more. But if I ever come back to the subject, I'd love to know your hopes and ideas for the next Elder Scrolls game. What do you think is the most important change? Should some core aspects be completely reinvented, or do you just hope for a broader selection of weapons and longer quests? Share your thoughts down there in the comments, and while you are at it, like and subscribe, because it's free and doesn't hurt anyone, and it's good for me. For now, I go back to making another Skyrim build, and we will see each other again. Bye. Bye.